Guys, welcome back to another YouTube video. Now, in today's video, guys, I'm going to be doing a full review on the newest film by Alex Garland, Civil War. Now, before I get onto this review, just know that I am trying to stay caught up with everything coming out in the month of April as far as movies go. And so trying to tackle that along with it already being a busy month for me in general is pretty difficult. So just bear with me here. Obviously, I got the Fallout TV show going on as well. I'm 3 episodes through that. I'm really hoping to have a full review of the entire season by the ending of the month at the latest. So just bear with me here on everything. We got even more movies coming up this next week, and I'm still trying to catch up on movies that just came out this past week. So just bear with me here. And other than that, getting on to the review, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier on in the year, but Civil War was probably one of my most anticipated movies of the year, and for very different reasons than many of the movies that I've already seen this year or movies that still have yet to release. And that's because a lot of movies this year have really sold it for me on the trailers. And that wasn't really the case with Civil War. Initially, when I saw the trailer for this movie and found out about it, I thought this was going to be some sort of disaster movie. And so I was like, okay, I'm in the mood for a disaster movie. I'll go check this movie out when it releases. But because a lot of people were able to attend early access screenings to this movie and whatnot, and able to see it like a month in advance, I saw a ton of reviews for this movie beforehand, and it became very evident that this movie had something very, very different to offer. And so it made me even more interested on what I was going to get out of this movie. And I would definitely say that it's one of those movies very similar to my two most favorite movies of last year, Oppenheimer and Iron Claw. It's one of those movies that is really, really going to stick with you for a while after and really make you think about the current world we live in. And I really wish that was the goal of a lot more movies nowadays. Because I really like those types of movies where you don't just watch it and you leave and you never think about it again, but it's one of those movies that really, really makes you think and make you ponder about what you have just watched. And so, I mean, just, I guess, getting straight into the positives for this movie, I think that it was one of the most tense theatrical experiences I have had in a long time. And it wasn't just because I was in a packed theater, which Civil War has been getting a lot of business this week, and I'm really curious to see how the box office numbers are going to turn out. But it wasn't just because I was in a packed theater, which places a lot of emphasis on the intensity of certain scenes. But I think Alex Garland just really nailed it on the sound in this movie, where when there's gunfire happening, when there's explosions happening, it's not just some kind of background noise happening. It really does resonate, and it will absolutely shock you during certain scenes. I literally do not recall the last time I physically jumped in my seat while in the theater, and that is exactly what happened during this movie, which is kind of funny because you have a lot of horror movies coming out nowadays that are playing off of cheap jump scares constantly. It doesn't even faze me. But with this movie, because Alex Garland did such a great job on the sound and a great job building up suspense during scenes, he was able to physically make me jump during certain scenes in this movie. Particularly, there's this scene in the middle of the movie, which I don't want to give any detail to, because if you're planning on seeing this movie, I don't want to take anything away from the experience that you're going to have in this, but let's just say it involves Jesse Plemons, and it is one of the most shocking scenes that I have experienced in cinema. And is really truly the highlight of this movie for sure. Definitely the best scene of the movie. And reminded me a lot of The Walking Dead. Now, you guys know, obviously, I'm a huge fan of The Walking Dead, and it just reminded me of The Walking Dead in the fact that we have a lot of, moments in throughout the Walking Dead show where we're having an interaction with a character we've never met before and kind of getting their worldview and their take on the current situation and their sort of morale with how the world works now. And I thought it was just really able to capture that very, very well in this scene. Also, obviously, just extremely shocking. So a really, really great scene. One of the greatest scenes that I've seen in theaters in quite some time. Positive that I had for this movie is that there is a lot of really, really horrifying and disturbing imagery and sequences in this movie. Now, if you're one of those people who's kind of squeamish about that stuff, I would probably stray away from this movie. But the reason why I'm praising that is because I think it really tied in well with the theme of this movie, which is about photojournalism and war journalism. And I think it was just really like a quintessential example of showing the beauty and the horror of war simultaneously. I just thought it did a really, really great job with that here. One last positive that I have for this movie is I think that our surrounding cast here, our main group, is really, really great. Essentially, there's like this press group that is traveling from New York to Washington, D.C., trying to interview the president before the Western forces, as they call them in this movie, capture and kill him, essentially, because like the Western forces, it's like California and Texas team up in this movie for some reason, and they're trying to like capture and kill the president. So this press group is trying that we're following with throughout the entire movie is trying to interview the president before that happens. So obviously we have Kirsten Dunst, and then we have Wagner Moura, who's sort of the leader of the group, so to say. Then you have this younger actress here, Kaylee Spaney. Hopefully I pronounced that right. And then you have Stephen McKinley Henderson as the older guy, and they all do a really, really great job, have their unique characteristics and their unique take on the world, as I was sort of mentioning earlier. A lot of people were like kind of knocking on Kirsten Dunst in this movie for not really showing a lot of emotion, because she's, the character that has already seen a lot of this stuff. She's the experienced photojournalist in this movie, and so a lot of the stuff in this movie doesn't really faze her. And so a lot of people are kind of knocking on her for that, but I think that they were still really able to capture through like her facial expressions in this movie, especially at the later part of this movie. Like you could really see how this stuff has haunted her, like just through her facial expressions. It's really, really negatively impacted her. Then obviously you have the younger actress in this movie who hasn't seen any of this stuff and reacts just as anybody else was, so she does a really great job with that. And then you have our main lead, played by Wagner Moura, who has a lot of his friends killed in this movie, and so he's really able to capture a lot of emotion on screen very, very well. So I really like our surrounding cast in this movie. Moving on to the mixed category and sort of falling back onto the war journalism and photojournalism stuff that I was talking about earlier, I think that obviously Alex Garland did a really good job as far as the imagery went. But when it came to the commentary, I'm not really sure where to land on that. Now, I'm sure if you've watched other reviews, you've heard that this movie stays pretty apolitical about talking about anything U.S. politics related, and only really commentates on the main theme, which is about photojournalism. And so when it came to that, I'm just not really sure where where to land on it here, because I'm just somebody who doesn't really just kind of fundamentally disagrees with it in the first place, because I don't like the idea of, people just recording other people dying in the midst of a war instead of going in to help them and whatnot. I obviously can partially understand it because, they make it very clear that they have a passion for trying to capture the truth instead of letting, the mainstream media services put their own narrative out. They're trying to capture what's really going on for themselves, and really, being able to put the truth out there. So I can sort of understand it in that regard, but I think the movie gets a little bit too carried away at certain points, where they're like really trying to get this good shot of somebody dying, or they're like, hey, can you stand over here so I can take a picture of you, behind this like dead body or something like that. And I think it just goes a little too over the top there in that respect. There's parts of it that I like, because I think that they really do a good job at, like at the beginning of the movie, you have the younger actress who's like, so are you going to be there are you going to be there to take the shot when I die? And they sort of come back to that at the ending of the movie, and they sort of pay it off in a sort of satisfying way. And so I kind of like what they did with that in that regard, but otherwise, I'm just not really sure where to land on it here. Maybe I'm misinterpreting something here, but just wasn't really sure where to land as far as the commentary for that kind of stuff went. Moving on to the negatives, and the first thing I want to get out of the way is I think that the ending to this movie was a bit rushed, where we have all this build up to the movie of finally getting to the president and interviewing him one last time before they do capture him. And I think the ending is just a little bit too abrupt, and I wish they would have played it out more for maybe like 10 more minutes, and things would have paid off a lot better. So that was just one quick thing I wanted to get out of the way. But the main thing I wanted to talk about was the fact that the movie chose to be apolitical. And like I said, a lot of people, if you watched other reviews, talked about this, and a lot of people liked it for that. And I'm somebody who didn't really like the movie for that. And it's not because I wanted the movie to, push some narrative that I agree with through my ear so that I could be, high-fiving the movie, throughout the entire runtime or anything like that. I just would have rather have had the movie at least dive in a little bit onto, certain characters' motivations and whatnot and why all of this was happening, just to give a little bit of background info rather than just choosing to unnecessarily restrain itself from talking about anything other than the main theme itself. So I think just for a little bit of, expositional reasons, I guess, or giving us a little more information, I would have liked for the movie to dive into it a little bit more. And honestly, like, if they were going to try to make some kind of political statement during this movie, I would have rather they had done that. Like, just take a bold swing, say what you want to say about the potential for the United States to go into civil war, and take a bold swing and go for it. And even if you miss or I disagree with what you're saying, I'd rather you do that than just restrain yourself from saying anything unnecessarily. All that being said, though, despite my minor side criticisms that I had for this movie, I would still highly recommend this. If you're looking for a movie that is really going to resonate with you for a while after, I would definitely check out Civil War. I think for what it was trying to do, and for a concept as big as this, because you could obviously make an entire show about the United States going into a civil war in modern day and what that would look like. So I think for what it was trying to do and the concept that it had, I think the movie did its job very, very well. Alex Garland stuck with one theme and stayed through it the entire movie. He didn't choose to go on to any side plots or make all this, this other statements and commentary about all this other stuff. He strictly showed you what, modern day civil war, a U.S. civil war in modern day would look like through the lens of photojournalism and war journalism. And in that respects, he did a very, very great job there. So ignoring all of my side criticisms that I had for this movie, this was a very, very solid film. Definitely one of the most tense theatrical experiences I have experienced in a while. And yeah, it was really, really great. Definitely a solid 9 out of 10 rating for this movie, and I would definitely recommend it. So that's pretty much all I got for you guys. Make sure you guys stay tuned. We got a lot more movies coming out in the month of April, and I'm going to continue watching the new Fallout show. I really wish they wouldn't have just dumped out all 8 episodes right away so that, binge watchers who can watch all that shit in one day could get ahead of me, but... and I mean, I think I would have just enjoyed the show more had they done it by week to kind of build up that anticipation throughout up to the finale. But either way, trying to get it caught up with everything up here, so bear with me, and that's all I got. So like and subscribe, guys, and I will see you next time.